Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers and sisters. As world events are rapidly heading toward what will culminate to the end of history, I have decided to start this YouTube Hijrah Channel. And some of you will know me very well. My name is Yasser. I was born in Birmingham in the not so great Britain. Former police officer in the British police force for approximately 16 years. Around 3 years ago, I decided to leave my job. I decided to leave my home, and I decided to leave Britain to emigrate away from Western civilization for a number of reasons, which I will go into in future videos, inshallah. So why have I decided to speak out about my personal journey? And why would anybody be interested in me or my journey? After all, I'm no one famous, I'm no scholar, I'm just a normal person like you in this complex and complicated world. So I want to explain as to exactly why I have created this channel, so that it may assist those of you who are living in this complicated and confusing. Today we live in a time of sheer and utter confusion. The majority of us are so desperately trying to find a way out of this ever-increasing confusion. But sadly for most of us, the confusion clouds of darkness are engulfing, just like the smoke engulfs a fire. What is the solution? Whenever we take a dilemma or issue to a scholar or imam, in most cases, the confusion increases tenfold because there are so many conflicted answers. And instead of being rightly guided, we end up being quite misguided from the truth. And those who end up being rightly guided look down upon the rest like they are sheep. Yet in this strange world, we all need a continuous guide. And we say, how blessed are we that we have Allah Almighty as the ultimate guide. And we say, how blessed are we to have His sacred words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the form of sacred text, the Holy Quran, which in itself is guidance from the start of history to the end of history. And of course, how blessed are we to have the final messenger of Allah Almighty, the blessed Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. And yet we are still in a state of confusion. Having all of this, we are still in a state of darkness and confusion. Something's gone wrong, and something has drastically gone wrong if we are still in the midst of darkness. And so with world events taking place, of course the current atrocities that are taking place in the Holy Land, and I won't call it a conflict between Israel and Palestine, but there are atrocities that are being committed there. What are we to do? And should we follow guidance from CNN or BBC or the Sky News or Piers Morgan or anyone else for that matter? Or should we follow guidance from the Holy Quran? Surah Al-Baqarah verse 257, I believe, tells us clearly, فَأَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allahu waliyul lazina amanu yukhrijuhum minaz zulumati ilan nur. Allah is the guardian of those who believe. He brings them out of every darkness into light. And of course, those who disbelieve, their guardians are the evil ones who bring them out of light into all kinds of darkness. And they are destined for the fire, and they shall remain their abode forever. So here we have a clear evidence that it's not the TV channels or the news or media channels or Twitter or social media. Actually it's called X now. I'm sure there's some kind of symbolism behind that too, but we do find our guidance from these sources, our guidance primarily, secondarily, if that's the word, comes from the Holy Quran, nowhere else. And so therefore our answers will be in the Quran if we want to learn what's happening in the Holy Land. So now then, given the atrocities that are happening in the Holy Land, and it's nothing new, these atrocities have been happening for many years now. What should we do? Should we go out and protest in the towns and cities of the Western countries? Should we plead with the leaders who themselves are Zionists and who themselves have caused the state of Israel to come into being all them years ago, back in 1917, when a British army captured Jerusalem, and then of course everybody knows about the subsequent Balfour Declaration. So then, should we go out and start waving Palestinian flags and show our support in such ways, or is there anything else that we actually should be doing? And in these great times of turmoil and slaughter. And so the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, in a hadith said, "Al-ibada fil harji ka hijratan ilayya." Worship in times of great turmoil, in times of confusion and in times of mass slaughter. For worshipping during such times is like hijrah to me. It's like emigrating to me. And so when we look at this instruction from our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that in times of great confusion and persecution, in times of oppression and mass slaughter, it is worship which will primarily save you from the fitna of the end times confusion. And worship during such times of trials and tribulations will be like making hijrah. So meaning, if you can remain steadfast in worship during these times of confusion and deception, then the reward is enormous, deservedly so. And so these actions of worship obviously are far greater than going outside the parliament with a Palestinian flag and waving that about for about 5 hours, and then going back home thinking that's a good deed done for the day, because that will not help anybody. It is worship and worship alone that will help those that are suffering, those that are oppressed, and it will help us who are in the midst of confusion and darkness. So, al-ibada fil harji ka hijratan ilayya. Worship in such times, for worshipping in these times is like emigrating to me. Earlier on in this video, I alluded to the fact that I left Western civilization approximately 3 years ago to emigrate from the Western lands. And I can say hand on heart that before that physical migration took place, within my inner self and my heart took place a spiritual and emotional migration. And obviously that was a lengthy process. It took a few years. And then it was only after that process was I able to physically take the steps of making hijrah. So in the end times, it is sincere worship which will provide us with the protection that we need. It is worship which will increase and make our iman stronger, and it is iman that will act as a powerful shield against the multitude of fitna, the trials and tribulations that are being fired like arrows towards us. Thus it is through worship one can attain nur, light, and light comes directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to whomsoever He chooses to grant light. And it is light that is desperately needed by all of us to continuously navigate through the constant darkness of the end times. Watching television and news channels and looking at the internet, Google and social media and all this fake gadgetry will not help one little bit. Of course, one must gather facts and evidence, but it is worship that will take you out of the darkness and into the light. So the Hadith is a very critical tradition if we are to save ourselves and our faith, and it urges us to remain steadfast in worship. The Hadith is a very critical tradition if we are to save ourselves and our faith. It urges us to remain steadfast in worship, because amidst the widespread chaos, disorder, and a steady decline of moral standards, people will become obsessed with amassing material possessions and become caught up in rivalry and competition over them. Consequently, they will end up losing their faith. They will find themselves drowning in never-ending worldly distractions, so much so that little time will be available to worship in a way that will do it justice and do yourself justice. When we look at this hadith, it is fair to say that we reached this point quite a long time ago, a state of sheer confusion and a state of mass slaughter on different fronts, putting aside war, conventional warfare. That is, the past 3 years can be described no less than as mass slaughter, the great slaughter still in progress. And those fortunate enough to be blessed by Nur, by Allah Almighty, have been able to see the different type of warfare unleashed upon mankind. The ones who are too busy, too distracted by this glamorous world, they didn't bat an eyelid and believe what they were told, no questions asked. The ones who have truth and sincerity in their hearts and who are sincere in their worship were able to see very clearly the mass slaughter taking place early on from 2020 even till now, and perhaps for generations to come. This was my debut and first video in regards to emigrating in the path of Allah Almighty, and I hope it gave you some insight. And the following videos I will post will be about my personal journey before I took that step, during and after, up until now. Because I know there are many people out there in the West who want to leave, but for some reason there is something that's pulling them back, and they're finding it extremely difficult to take that first step. And if I can help even one person, I think that will be an achievement in itself. So thank you very much for listening and watching. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.